Hi, it's Allison from the Law School Toolbox. Today, we're excited to have tech innovator and entrepreneur Kevin Surace here with us to talk about AI. Welcome, Kevin.
Hey, glad to be here, Allison.
Oh, I'm super excited. Well, to start us off, can you just give our listeners a little bit of information about your background so they've got some context?
Sure. I've been in the tech space for about 40 years, even though I'm only 28. So
Amazing.
let's just start with that. No, not 28 anymore. I've been involved in the AI space for about 25 years, starting with inventing the very first virtual assistants and voice user interfaces. So I'm kind of known as the father of the virtual assistant, which became Siri and Alexa and Google Assistant, all the things we know today. And now we're becoming really agents backed by large language models. So it's a fascinating time in AI for sure. It's a fascinating time for every field that we're in. I have just shy of 100 worldwide patents. So a
Nice.
lot of
Very
patents.
impressive.
Yeah,
And if people want to learn more about you or reach out, how can they do that?
KevinSurace.com.
Well, there you go. Um, I
We
know.
try to
Well, I've
make it easy.
got Yeah, exactly. So you've obviously been working with AI and sort of related things for a while. W- A lot of our audience, law school, people who've gone to law school, what do you see as some of the most interesting legal questions or
Mm.
problems that some of these technologies present? And obviously, none of this is legal advice. No one should take it that way, but just a general sort of view on this, because I think there are some really interesting questions here.
There really are. I mean, look, just start with the fact our laws, including copyright, trademark, etc., were never designed for an AI. They were designed for humans. So while
Right.
we openly want you to read books and learn from, say, novels, and then go write your own novel, no one's ever really thought of a computer learning the novels, but really learning them better than we can. They can remember all of it. And then writing its own novel based on what it learned. Now, our copyright law suggests that again, not legal advice, suggests that if that AI were a human, that's we can all go to the library, and as long as we don't write a derivative work, we're fine. Truly a derivative work, right? So I
Right.
can't read a novel, just change the names and call it my novel. But I can learn from Ernest Hemingway and write in a similar fashion to Ernest Hemingway, and that might not be probably wouldn't be a derivative work. So AI is doing the same, and I can make AI today, any Gen AI model, write in the style of Ernest Hemingway. It is not supposed to rewrite exactly the lines of Ernest Hemingway, but it will write a new story based on my prompts, etc. So look, there's some big legal questions with that for sure. Is that going to stand? Is the Supreme Court ultimately going to allow that? Is the USPTO going to rethink those rules? When it comes to AI. So there's that section. And then there's the section of should AI be allowed to learn from my work, whether I'm an illustrator, a photographer. I didn't license my work to be used in that way. I licensed it for people to enjoy. But if it's out there, I'm going to softly say in the public domain, but you get the point. If it's out there, invisible, and it's on the web, whatever, humans could learn from it. I could learn from every picture that some photographer made, and then I could learn to take my own photographs that way. And so AI is doing that. And again, there's guardrails on it. It's not going to reproduce exactly what you did, but it will learn from your pictures of Yosemite and produce a photographic representation of Yosemite, somewhat based on learning from your work and millions of other works, right? And so some photographers would say, that's not fair. Sarah Silverman has famously said, it's not fair that you learn from my book and I'm suing.
Right. Yeah, I'm on a list with a bunch of people who are authors, and there was a spreadsheet that came out that someone had said, these are the books that we trained it on, and a lot of the people were on there, and
Sure.
a lot of them were not very happy about that. But I was like, on the other end, you're like, well, if they bought the copy of the book, I don't
Or if
know. That's
they
an
rent,
interesting question.
that's right. If they rented it from the library or the equivalent of
Right.
digital library, you know, they get to, again, our laws say that humans get to learn from these works, from copyrighted works, so that they can build their own work, right? It's something that's different. And that's what AI is doing. So to the extent we treat AI as if it's another intelligent thing, not biological, but intelligent, well, then we would say it's fair for AI to learn from any source. that is available to it. Now, is it fair to learn from the New York Times by paying only for one subscription and then going through and learning from all of the New York Times? The New York Times has said, no, that's unfair. We want a
Not happy about it.
different level of payment. And, OpenAI and Google and Microsoft and others are saying, I paid my $9 for the subscription this week. I read all of the New York Times and I'm done. So
Right, I'm good. Like, I know all of it now, like, I mean, to be fair, like, I probably read, like, 30% of the New York Times in an average day, and I only pay once, but,
well,
I'm not memorizing it and using it forever.
AI can go and search all the way back to, 1854 and remember all of it.
Right.
So I think these things are gonna have to be tested because our laws were designed at a time when these weren't the case, right? On the other hand, these are the most amazing tools we have ever had, including for lawyers, put in our hands. Period, full stop. Period, full stop. And if you think of all this learning that goes on, yes, I mean, look at how many years attorneys have paid for LexisNexis and similar kinds of things, but AI can go and, pull every possible case record from every possible case from every situation that even has nothing to do with what I'm working on. And, is that fair? Is it right? Should they do it? Who should they pay? I don't have an answer for that, but it's a pretty darn great output and
Yeah, we're gonna
allows us.
talk about that in a minute. Um, yeah, it is interesting some of the stuff you can do, like, a year ago, so when, all the image-based stuff was really quite new,
Mhm.
I, for my nephew's birthday, had the AI generate Spider-Man coming down with a bunch of balloons and
Right.
then to a little boy, and then at that point, I actually had to Photoshop his head onto it, it wasn't quite there yet. But, I mean, definitely some copyright issues around that, but his mind was blown. He was just like he was looking, he was like, "Is that me?
Right.
Like, that wasn't a picture. Have I seen Spider-Man bringing
Right.
me balloon how did you get a picture of this?" Like, it's just like that four-year-old mind was just, like, absolutely blown wide open by this one.
It is amazing what you can do, and, they put a lot more guardrails on to try to not produce anything that would be copyrighted, right?
Yeah,
But
this was pretty good at
yeah,
the
that was
time.
pretty good. But you could definitely like, I could put me in, in a spacesuit on Mars right now with,
Oh, yeah.
Vanna, which is one of the models. I mean, very, very easy to do, and, of course, I could have done that in Photoshop for the last 30 years, but it just
Right,
would have taken
exactly.
me hours instead of 30 seconds.
Yeah, exactly,
10,000
that's the
hours of work
thing.
to learn. Yeah, so it's absolutely fascinating, and it turns out this is valuable because we all produce PowerPoints, we all produce, content for a variety of purposes for in this field for court, but for other purposes. And now I've got a machine that will produce content for me, including visual content that I couldn't have easily produced before without hiring an illustrator. And, it's not about the money to hire the illustrator. It's like, I want the illustrations in 5 minutes, not in 5 weeks. And so how can I do that faster? And now we've got Gen AI that will generate these things for us.
All right, well, let's talk about that because I think a lot of lawyers, probably a lot of illustrators, are concerned that these Gen AI tools are coming for their jobs, particularly lawyers, given how much research and writing they're doing. What are your thoughts around this?
So look, it is coming for some jobs, not lawyers. I'll explain why in a moment. But look, if you're in tier one customer support, probably overseas, in a room with 500 other people answering the phone, that job is short for this world because frankly, Gen AI virtual assistants will do as good or a better job than you can. It will produce a very accurate sentences and language and very accurate responses to your problems, more accurate than humans would, because you could train it on the essentially the FAQs, right? Um, so that's troublesome if that's your job. But if you're a lawyer, let me harken it back to 1985 to 1990. You're in finance and Excel shows up. Many people said, Excel is coming for my job because they thought their job was to have a pencil, a calculator, and a ledger book and to write in and add up the things in the ledger book. That's what hundreds of people in an accounting team would do, right? In a ledger book. I don't even know how we built billion-dollar companies that way, but we did. We built our companies on ledger book. And then Excel comes around, and because they thought that was their job, they said, well, that's it. My job is over. It's coming for my job. Well, we employ more people in finance today than we did then. except none of them are with pencils and ledger books, and nobody's doing long division in their head. We don't need to do that. We have a machine that does that. But now we're all much more strategic about the numbers, and we can look at the numbers and work on all kinds of models on how to look at the demographics or how to look at the company or how to drive costs down or whatever it is, right? They're more data now. So in fact, Excel brought around a great, I would say, resurgence in what you could actually accomplish in finance. So I actually think that AI is doing that to law. And I think that because if you think about all the research that a lawyer may have to do for a particular case with research assistants and all that, that is actually pretty mundane. And actually, humans aren't good at it. Now, the reason, now I know someone's going to listen to that and say, no, no, you don't understand. I've worked. No, no, no. A human is not good at research. And that's because we can only take information in primarily with our eyes. And we can only find so much and we can only read so much at a certain speed. But AI can take it in more than a million times faster, more than a million times faster. Remember all of it and then present you the best option. Now, here's the interesting thing. You are the robot overlord. So you get to seed it. You get to say, here's what I'm looking for. You get to say, here's the kind of judge I've got in this case. So I want to see things that he or she has ruled on, but also similar judges, maybe from around the country, let's just say. And and I want to go back to 1850, you know, uh, and I need the answer. I need the 10 best answers to this, to this question I'm posing in the next minute. Boom, done. And this is much more than a search engine because it's able to really analyze and diagnose sort of what you're looking for in cases that are totally unrelated. What do you mean? This is a case about a banana, but there's this one ruling here that you know what I'm saying, or this
Yeah,
one
of course.
use. So, so that's fascinating. We would have never found it. Our legal research assistants would not have found it, but it will find it for you. Now, you've got these 5 or 10 outcomes. Now you get to strategize on which ones of these you use, at what time, how do you bring it to court? How do you know, how does it relate to what you're doing? So this is what's fascinating. You will spend much more time really strategizing about the case than, oh, I have to do research. You don't have to do research anymore. It's done for you. So it's like Excel showed up and you're free from the mundane. And now you get to strategize and really use your brain. Research is not using a brain. It is really just, monotony at some level. So I think attorneys have to get to the point where they realize that was monotonous and it's okay to let it go. It's great to let it go. Let me add to that.
Right.
There'll be a time shortly, possibly even this fall, when attorneys coming into firms, if they say, yeah, I've heard about this, generative AI and I don't use that. Okay. They're not going to get a job. It's the ones that come in and say, I've used it you know, throughout getting my JD and throughout my college career. And this is how I've used it. This is what I've learned. I'm an expert in prompting. I'm an expert in editing. I'm an expert in the outcome. I'm an expert in validating the outcomes to make sure that they're accurate and that it's not junk. Uh, you're hired.
I think that's right, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. I do want to pick up on one thing you said because I read an interesting New Yorker article last night where they were talking about how the current sort of LLM models, ChatGPT, whatever, are not good at planning, and that was kind of fascinating. Even very simple things of planning,
Mhm.
they're not particularly good at. But what that was talking about was that you could theoretically have your like ChatGPT ish type of thing do the intake so people could interact naturally, but then you pass it to something else that does the actual planning. They were using the example of like
Certainly.
tools for games and that kind of thing. They're very good at actually strategizing and simulations, and they can do a million simulations. So I think that's kind of an interesting idea to think about. Well, how much of that strategy can we actually outsource to the machine as well?
Mhm.
But, that there are these two separate pieces, and the
Oh,
current systems are not really great at both.
yeah, that's right. So first of all, when I talk about Gen AI and I'm saying for legal, what I'm really talking about is not going to ChatGPT. I'm talking about a large language model like GPT-4 that has what we call an embed, where I have embedded all of the legal cases that may be throughout history, right? So I'm going to limit its output to only those things which it finds in this data. Okay. So
So
it's
this is your RAG, basically.
yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
you are still using all the language capabilities that it has, but you're saying you will not give me anything from out here. You will limit your outputs to these. And so there are
Right.
many
And
of these.
you will not make it up.
You will not make it up. Well, you can't make it up if you're limiting the output to the things found in this text,
Right,
right?
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Right. So that's the trick. And that's called an embed, and that's done now often. And there's companies that are offering that in the legal world, right? Already, who've done that embedding, who've done that to the database. So then when you get to planning, it is true. Look, one of the things you can certainly do is then get these 10 outcomes, right? Or these 10 cases that matter. Then you can turn it around and say, which of the 10 should I focus on the most, given this is the case? And it will opine on that. It may not be right or wrong, because remember, these models, these Gen AI models, the LLMs, are meant to create amazing sentences, perfect sentences, not necessarily accurate sentences, but perfect sentences. It's just trying to recreate phrases. But since it learns so much, the phrases tend to, 80 or 90 or 95% of the time tend to be relatively accurate because it learned from all of human knowledge. So you want to use this throughout your work. You can certainly use it to help you plan your day. It's not perfect at planning, but it'll give you some new ideas.
Yeah, we've tried to use it to plan, like, schedules and things, not quite there yet, but
Right.
this article was interesting. I was like, "Oh, maybe there are other options I could be looking at that would do the planning
Hmm.
piece.
Yep.
Okay, now I get that."
Right. Right.
Well, most people listening to this are probably law students, and they might be saying, "Okay, this makes sense, like, I hear you on this," but do you have any advice if they are interested in really exploring these emerging technologies? What can people do?
Well, the easiest thing to do without spending any money is use ChatGPT. You probably can't use Dolly 3 for free, but you need to use Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, or get a $20 a month subscription to to GPT-4. Certainly use the Microsoft tools, which are based on GPT-4 and 4.5, which is Copilot, and it's in everything. Now, the reason I say to use them is because, again, when it comes time to get a job, people are going to be asking this question: have you generated graphics this way? Have you generated illustrations? Have you generated some casework? Have you researched cases? Have you whatever? And you just want to say, I know these models really well. Obviously, I didn't have access to the big legal one that's, locked down and tied to legal databases, but I had really a great experience using it. And I think that schools, universities that say to the students, you are not to use ChatGPT for anything, are doing a disservice to their students. What they should be saying is, please try and use ChatGPT for everything, but you better become a really good editor and a really good fact checker. So those are different skills, and I want you to have those skills because you're gonna need those skills in the job come fall.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think any professor at this point who gives a take-home law school exam and thinks that people aren't gonna use, like, certain tools on it, even if they're not supposed to, is like, "Really? Maybe you should rethink your pedagogy here,"
You're
like.
exactly right. I see this all the time, and I'm on the board of a university, and you have lots of professors there going, "Go use it," and you got others going, "You will not use this anytime this semester." Okay, they're using it all through the semester. Just get over it, right? It's the same as don't use the calculator at home to solve this math problem. Well, that's a view.
Right.
Or use Excel. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'm like, I use my phone to do math all the time. It's like once I learned calculus, I feel like I forgot arithmetic. I mean, and that's fine. I don't like, I can still do math in my head if I have to. It's just faster if I just add it up.
and you'll never
Yeah.
be asked to do long division in your head again in your life. And I can
Oh,
tell
you
you.
you know where I have been asked to do this, which is interesting. So I have a, side job as a ski instructor, and I was teaching kids, and kids around the like 6, 7-year-old love to do math. So when we're doing it, we're standing in the ski school line,
Yep.
the line to get on the lift, and I'm trying to desperately think of some way to keep them entertained. And we started doing math problems, and like these kids are good at it. It was actually hard.
Yeah. Yeah, well, because that's what they're learning right now, and then they forget it
Yeah.
afterwards.
So it's just
Uh,
funny. I'm like, "What is, like, 3 plus 4?" They're like, "That's too easy. What is, like, 79 divided by?" I'm like, "Whoa, alright.
no,
That's not gonna be." So you just never know when you're gonna need these skills.
that's right.
Oh.
That's right. But there's a lot of skills that we no longer need in the job world. Math is generally one of them, right? Because we have Excel, we have
Yeah.
calculators, etcetera. But, But I think we're going to find that this kind of traditional legal research is also a skill that we prided ourselves on that will be no longer required going forward. There's a machine that does it
No,
better.
right, and frankly, a lot of that was a huge hassle anyway. I
Of course
talked
you
with the founders of Paxton AI, which is a legal
Yeah.
tool, and they were saying one of their most popular features is that they convert natural language into Boolean, and the
Yeah.
Booleans are different for Lexis and Westlaw and, like, all that kind of stuff. You'd have to call up the person and be like, "Hi, I'm trying to, like, get this
Right.
case in this
Right.
jurisdiction,
It's
and
an
I'm not really sure
and
how to
or
phrase it." And they're like, "Oh, you need to do this, 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 and this." But you spend 20 minutes and they have a person that was paid to do that. Like, it's
yes.
crazy.
Yes, and you need parentheses around this, and then you need to do
Right.
the add, and then
Yeah.
oh, it's the ampersand for this, not the add. You go, "Just stop."
Exactly, you're just like, "Oh my god, I just wanna be like, I need a case in New York that says this." You know?
And they were
Like
and the thing with those search engines were basically search engine. They're not using any AI. They were literally searching for key phrases and things, right?
yeah,
Not particularly sophisticated, but these AI tools now that are using those databases are sophisticated.
right, well, then that too, I mean, this wasn't that long ago, but they had people that were doing the case notes, a
Yeah,
person had to sit there and summarize the case, and then you're like, "Well, do I agree with that summary? Like, I don't know, like, should I keep reading the case? I don't know how good this person was." Like, yeah, all of that seems like it's just sort of out the
Oh,
window at this point.
I can feed a case in and get a summary from an LLM in, 30 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Well, overall, what do you kind of see as the biggest pros and cons of these technologies moving forward, like, broadly speaking?
Well, all of the technologies we've developed since the wheel have all been about productivity, right? And people have used them properly and other people have misused them, right? The car is a productivity tool. It's also a bomb. So you
Sure.
can use it badly. And that's
Yes.
true with generative AI and AI in general. It can be, and it is being used badly by cyber criminals and others. But this is a productivity tool and it's going to make most fields, certainly most white collar fields, much more productive. And now I'll give you an example in the legal field because it's one that we use based on this analysis out of Stanford that quickly analyze an NDA, human analyzing, human lawyer reviewing an NDA versus, generative AI reviewing it. Gen AI was done in 30 seconds and actually was more accurate than most human. And the reason for that is there is no human after the first, I don't know, 3 months that ever wants to review another NDA. You just don't
No.
wanna do it. This is the worst use of the human brain. And so you get your JD and you get your first job and they say, "You're gonna be on the NDA desk. You'll be reviewing NDAs for the next 3 years." You wanna shoot yourself, right? You go, "That's not what I went to school for." So now there's a machine that will review NDAs and do a far better job. And so I think we're going to have the lawyers really manage that, right? Because in the end, they're going to be responsible and they're going to look for any abnormalities, but you're going to use the machine for a lot of the mundane tasks. And it will really free you up to be super strategic about cases. And I just think that is a huge bonus. And it's going to make firms that embrace Gen AI in a variety of ways way far ahead and way more productive than firms that don't.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine a tool like, in the NDA context of like, okay, you spit all your stuff out and you basically ask it, like, what about this looks weird? Is there anything
Right,
in here that I should be looking at? Whether it's a
right,
mistake, somebody's name is incorrect, you've got the wrong person, like anything about this just looks weird. Cause that's
right.
basically what like a very junior associate is doing anyway. But they don't have the knowledge base to say, oh, that is a non-standard clause that we need to take a look at. Whereas I'm sure that the AI does know because it's read billions of these things.
It does, and of course, the non-standard clause that everybody looks for is the residuals clause, which is basically, if I can remember it, I can keep it and I can use it, which is famously in the Microsoft NDAs and the IBM NDAs. But, you can flag that, but they're not gonna change it. So,
Right, exactly. I mean, a lot
if
of
you
this is
want
like,
to do
okay,
business
that's
with them
weird.
yeah, if you want to
But
do business with them, the residual clause is, if we remember it after you told us, we can use it, and it just is, or don't do business there.
right, well, I'm even thinking, friends of mine who've, say, for example, some very practical thing, they've had a trust and estates lawyer do their estate plan. And, like I'm a lawyer, a lot of my friends are lawyers, we read everything. And so you find these things where you're like, that's not the right address. Like when I was doing a real estate refinancing, halfway through the contract, they'd switched out my address. And I'm like, whoa, 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 this is not, this has to be corrected.
Right.
But people have had like incorrect names or like stuff that's been left out in one place. And, if you have a trust, like one place is the trust and one place it's you. It's like, that's not the same thing,
Right.
like stuff like
Right.
that just seems like, things that easily could be corrected.
I do love these, when you go to the title company and they give you this, this huge document, right?
Oh, yeah, like
And
this thing.
yeah, it's this thick. And so I go to page like 63 and I say, I'd like to change these 3 words. And they just look at me and go, nobody ever changes anything. It's not allowed.
Yeah, they're like, that's not how this works.
It's not how this works. Just sign it. Check that your
Yeah.
name and address is correct, and then you sign. There's
Yeah.
no changing any of this documentation.
No,
But if
I think when I ask them to correct the address, they're like, "Oh yeah, well, just sign it now and we'll like correct it." I'm like, "No, I'm not. Like,
no,
it has to be done right. These are legally binding documents. We're gonna file with like the title people."
apparently they didn't realize it was legally binding.
All right, Kevin. Well, any final thoughts you'd like to share here?
Look, I think there's going to be always two sets of people in any field, right? And we're seeing this across the landscape today. And I'll give you an old adage because I brought up the wheel. The old adage is this: there's two guys in town, whatever, 1,000 years ago, right? And they both carry food up the hill to the town up at the top of the hill. They carry it from the bottom, they carry it to the top. Everybody eats. It's good. They both have their tasks. They get rice when they bring food up, whatever the case is. All of a sudden, the wheel shows up, and one guy goes, "That's it. My job is over. I quit." And he dies a pauper, right? And probably 23 years old in those days. And the other guy says, "Let me get a second wheel. Let me build a cart, and now I can carry everybody's food, and I don't need the other guy." He dies a rich man. And I could give you this adage across every technology that came about from all the way to the internet and smartphones. And those who embrace technology end up being the overlord and the master of the technology and end up being more productive, end up winning. They are the winners. The losers don't embrace technology because they think, "Oh, it's going to take my job, it's going to hurt me." Now, over the last long, long, long period of time, it's typically sort of the older generation that says, "I don't want to learn anything new. Not for me. I'm going to retire in a few years, so I'm not touching that stuff." But certainly for many of your listeners in the younger generation, embrace everything you can, be the overlord of it, be the owner of it, and walk into those job interviews and walk into your firms or companies or wherever you're going to be, if you're corporate, and say, "I know how to use these tools. I know how to be more productive. I know how to have better outcomes. I know how to win cases better, even though I'm only 24 years old." Right?
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
I think that's the win, and I highly recommend embracing these new technologies and not worrying about that. It will be someone's job. It'll take someone's job, but it's not taking your job because you own the technology. It'll take someone's job who doesn't want anything to do with the technology.
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity, honestly, for people who are younger, really to come in and be that expert and be the person who's like, I can make us 50% more efficient on this task.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
mean, like time is money. Who wouldn't say yes to that?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
All right. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. And remind us again how people can find out about you if they want to know more.
Oh, yeah. My website, my keynote, my speaking website, all of that is kevinsurace.com. That's pretty easy. I'm sure you'll put it in the notes or
We will put it in
whatever.
the show notes, definitely.
Easy peasy. Yes. It's such a pleasure to be here and such a pleasure to talk to you and your wonderful listeners.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us. And thanks everyone for watching. And please subscribe so you don't miss anything. And you can check out lawschooltoolbox.com and reach out with any questions.